In this video, I'm going to show you how Washington's $375 million hotel's worst nightmare came true in plain sight, not because the tower fell over, but because the money, the politics, the lease, and the lawsuits all started pulling in opposite directions. Starting with the night this luxury hotel stopped looking like a trophy and started looking like a trap. Washington's most famous political hotel did not collapse into the street like the Hard Rock in New Orleans. Nobody watched concrete pancake onto Pennsylvania Avenue. No crane tore through the skyline. This nightmare was quieter, which honestly makes it more interesting, because rich people disasters love wearing a nice suit while the building is bleeding money underneath. The hotel was the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C., built inside the old post office building, one of the most recognizable historic federal properties in the city. Huge stone tower. Prime location, a few blocks from the White House. A building so central to Washington that you could practically hear lobbyists sweating through the walls. And for a while, it looked like the perfect luxury play. Take an iconic federal landmark, turn it into a five-star hotel, attach one of the loudest names in real estate, and sell Washington power people a place to spend money while feeling important. Then came the part nobody puts in the brochure. Contractors filed liens. Ethics lawsuits piled up. The hotel became a political lightning rod. Congressional investigators later said it lost more than $70 million while Donald Trump was president. The business reportedly needed money from other parts of the company to keep going. And then, after years of controversy, the lease was sold for $375 million, a price that sounded like a victory parade until the next owner also ran into financial trouble. Rewind to the promise, because that is where these stories always start. Nobody spends hundreds of millions of dollars converting a federal landmark into a luxury hotel by saying, hey, this might turn into a constitutional headache with room service. The pitch was prestige. The old post office building had history baked into every stone. It opened in the 1890s. It had a soaring clock tower. It survived decades of federal use, demolition threats, renovations, and bureaucratic limbo. It was not just another glass box hotel where every hallway looks like it was designed by a spreadsheet. This was a landmark, a piece of Washington real estate that came with symbolism. And symbolism in D.C. is basically a second currency. The plan was simple on paper: lease the building from the federal government, renovate it into a luxury hotel, and turn location into power. The hotel would sit close enough to the White House that guests could pretend proximity was influence. The lobby would become a stage. The restaurants would become meeting rooms with cocktails. The suites would become expensive little islands for people who wanted to be seen near the center of government. And the renovation looked the part. Grand lobby, polished stone, chandeliers, big flags, heavy furniture. The kind of decor that whispers luxury and also quietly asks if your credit card has enough emotional support. Everything about it screamed, this is not just a hotel, this is a statement. For a normal hotel, the statement might have been enough. Location, plus history, plus luxury can work. Washington always has visitors. Diplomats, lawyers, lobbyists, conferences, political donors, corporate executives, tourists, and people who say they are in town for meetings but mostly seem to be hovering near expensive bars. The demand is real. Every disaster has a hidden assumption. In New Orleans, workers worried about structural problems before the hotel came down. In super tall condo stories, the assumption is often that money can overpower wind, plumbing, elevators, or soil. In Washington, the hidden assumption was different, that a luxury hotel inside a federal building could become politically radioactive and still behave like an ordinary hotel business. That was the mistake. The hotel did not just sit in Washington. It sat inside a government-owned landmark leased from the General Services Administration. Then the man whose company controlled the hotel became President of the United States. Suddenly, the landlord was the federal government, the tenant was connected to the president, and the customers included political groups, foreign interests, Republican organizations, lobbyists, and federal agencies operating in the same ecosystem. You do not need a hard hat to see the problem. The foundation issue here was not concrete, it was conflict. A hotel depends on broad demand. You want conferences, weddings, tourists, corporate accounts, foreign travelers, government groups, and locals. But once the property became politically loaded, it split the market. To supporters, staying there could look like loyalty. To critics, staying there could look like corruption. To cautious corporations, it could look like unnecessary risk. That is not a normal customer base. That is, a hotel lobby turned into a metal detector for everyone's political motives. And then there was the lease itself. Historic federal buildings are not blank canvases. You cannot treat the old post office like a random motel off I-95 where you knock down a wall because the breakfast area feels gloomy. Landmark conversions come with preservation rules, federal oversight, lease obligations, public scrutiny, and a level of paperwork that could make a lawyer age in dog years. So the hidden design flaw was this. They built a prestige hotel where the business model required neutrality, but the brand created controversy. They built inside a public asset, but the profit was private. They created a luxury stage for Washington power, then acted surprised when the entire country started watching who walked across that stage. The first symptoms were not cracks in a wall, they were unpaid bills and lawsuits. Around the time the hotel opened, several contractors said they were still owed money for work on the project. Reports said liens were filed against the hotel by local contractors. One electrical contractor claimed it was owed more than $2 million. A plumbing and mechanical contractor reportedly claimed close to $3 million. Another construction company also filed claims. The total reported by NPR was more than $5 million in liens. Now, in construction, payment fights are not rare. Anyone who has ever remodeled a kitchen knows that by the end, 3 people are mad, one invoice has mysteriously evolved, and somebody is standing in dust saying, "No, that was not included." But on a luxury hotel project attached to a presidential brand, contractor liens are not just paperwork. They are smoke coming from the machine room. The claims suggested a project under pressure. Deadlines, change orders, disputed scope, final payments, and the classic construction question of who eats the overruns. The hotel wanted to open. The campaign calendar was moving. The building had to look finished. And when expensive projects race toward opening day, the last bills often become a knife fight in slow motion. This is where the nightmare starts to feel familiar. The public sees marble. The subcontractors see receivables. The guests see champagne. The people who installed the wiring want their checks. Luxury is usually the last layer applied over a very ugly spreadsheet. Then the hotel became more than a hotel. It became an argument with beds. After Trump became president, critics argued that the property created conflicts under the Constitution's emoluments clauses, which are supposed to prevent officials from accepting improper benefits from governments. Lawsuits were filed by watchdog groups, lawmakers, and state attorneys general. Some of those cases got tangled in procedural battles and eventually lost momentum after Trump left office. But the damage to the hotel's identity had already happened. The question was brutally simple. If foreign governments, political groups, or people seeking influence spent money at the hotel, was that just hospitality business? Or was it a way to curry favor with the president? That question hung over the property like bad weather. Every embassy event, every lobby sighting, every high-dollar room block could become a headline. The hotel lobby became famous as a place where power people might be seen, and that kind of fame is expensive. It brings attention, but not always profitable attention. Sometimes it brings lawyers, reporters, protesters, and congressional investigators. Great for drama, less great for RevPAR, if we're being honest. Supporters treated the hotel like a clubhouse. Critics called it a corruption sinkhole. Neutral travelers had to decide whether sleeping there was worth becoming part of a national argument. That is a bizarre problem for a hotel. Most hotels worry about pillows, parking, and whether the omelet station is backed up. This one had to worry about constitutional law. There was also a brand problem hiding inside the balance sheet. Luxury hotels usually love famous names, but only when the famous name widens the pool of guests. This name narrowed it. Some people wanted to be seen there. Others wanted to be seen anywhere else. Corporate travel departments do not enjoy explaining why their executives held a reception inside the political equivalent of a live grenade. Event planners hate uncertainty. Embassies hate headlines unless they can control them. That meant every booking had a shadow attached to it. And shadows cost money. If one side of the market treats the hotel like a clubhouse and the other side treats it like evidence, you no longer have a normal hotel. You have a loyalty test with pillow menus. The numbers are where the story gets sharp. According to documents later released by congressional investigators, the hotel lost more than $70 million during Trump's presidency. Public financial disclosures had shown revenue, but investigators said the underlying records showed major losses. That distinction matters. Revenue is the big, shiny number people love to wave around. Revenue says money came in. Profit asks whether any of it survived the trip. A hotel can generate impressive revenue and still be losing money if debt, lease payments, staffing, maintenance, food and beverage costs, taxes, insurance, legal fees, and brand pressure eat the whole plate. Congressional Democrats also said the Trump Organization had to inject tens of millions from other businesses to help support the hotel, and that Deutsche Bank provided a delay on loan payments. In plain English, the property that looked like a power machine was reportedly not standing on its own as cleanly as the public image suggested. And the irony is almost too neat. This was supposed to be the ultimate Washington trophy asset. Historic building, luxury flag, president's name, proximity to power, but the same conditions that made it famous also made it expensive to operate. The attention was not free. The lawsuits were not free. The political brand was not universally attractive. The preservation obligations were not free. The security environment was not free. The hotel became a machine that turned controversy into headlines, and headlines do not always pay the mortgage. Then came the sale. In 2022, the lease was sold for $375 million to CGI Merchant Group, with plans to rebrand the hotel as a Waldorf Astoria. On paper, that sounded like the grand exit. Take the controversial name off the front, bring in Hilton's luxury flag, and let the building become a normal, high-end hotel again. Honestly, that is the kind of move bankers probably describe with phrases like repositioning the asset, because apparently saying we need to scrape the politics off the marble is not technical enough. The sale price shocked a lot of observers. Reports at the time noted that many hotel brokers and consultants had not expected the property to fetch that much, especially given its losses. But premium real estate in Washington is a strange beast. The building was iconic. The location was priceless. The hotel had already been renovated. And if a buyer believed the main problem was the political brand, then removing that brand could look like the fix. But that is where the next layer of the nightmare shows up. If you pay a premium for a problem asset, you do not just buy the building, you buy the expectations attached to that price. You buy the need to make luxury revenue match luxury debt. You buy the pressure to prove the old failure was only branding, not the deeper economics of the property. The hotel became the Waldorf Astoria, Washington, D.C. The name changed, the controversy cooled, the marble stayed, the clock tower still looked gorgeous. But the financial gravity did not politely leave the room. A normal buyer can survive a difficult hotel if the price is low enough. That is the whole trick. You buy the headache at a discount, fix the story, stabilize the cash flow, and let time do its slow, boring magic. But if you buy the headache at a trophy price, you have to produce trophy performance. Every month becomes a little referendum on whether the deal made sense. That is where prestige gets dangerous. It convinces smart people they can pay for tomorrow's perfect version of a property before tomorrow has agreed to show up. The rebrand was logical. The math was harsher. A Waldorf Astoria flag can change the guest profile, but it cannot delete debt service, labor costs, historic building expenses, or the awkward fact that Washington luxury demand is powerful but not infinite. Reports later said the new ownership missed a loan payment, foreclosure proceedings began, and the property was eventually bought at a far lower figure than the $375 million sale price. That is the part that makes the whole story feel like a warning label. Because if the hotel was only struggling because of politics, a clean rebrand should have solved it. But if the underlying problem was that the asset was too expensive, too complicated, too debt-heavy, and too hard to operate profitably at the price paid, then the name on the door was only part of the issue. Luxury hotels are brutal businesses. People see the lobby and think the building must be printing money, but hotels are operating machines. Rooms have to be filled nightly. Restaurants have to perform. Staff has to be paid. Maintenance never ends. Historic buildings require special care. Washington demand can swing with politics, conferences, security concerns, and travel patterns. Debt does not care if occupancy had a moody quarter. Debt shows up every month like a raccoon in a trash can. Rude, persistent, and somehow your problem. So the nightmare came true twice. First, the Trump Hotel became trapped in political and legal conflict while losing money. Then the rebranded version proved that even without the loudest controversy, the economics could still be punishing. This is the important distinction. The building did not physically fail. The old post office is still standing. The clock tower still rises over Pennsylvania Avenue. People still photograph it. Guests can still walk through the grand spaces and feel like they are inside a serious piece of Washington history. What failed was the assumption that prestige can overcome every constraint. Prestige could not erase contractor disputes. Prestige could not erase constitutional questions. Prestige could not make a politically polarizing hotel feel neutral. Prestige could not turn revenue into profit by magic. Prestige could not make a $375 million sale price easy for the next owner to support. Prestige could not make a historic federal lease behave like a simple private hotel deal. That is the hotel version of physics collecting the bill. In a tower story, physics might be wind loads, soil movement, water intrusion, bad concrete, or elevator failures. In this case, the physics were financial and political. Debt, operating losses, public scrutiny, lease restrictions, brand risk, legal exposure, and the cold math of hotel operations. You can ignore those forces for a while if the lobby is pretty enough, but you cannot ignore them forever. The lesson is not that historic hotels are bad. Some are incredible. The lesson is that a hotel is never just its lobby. It is a stack of obligations. Who owns the ground? Who controls the lease? Who financed the renovation? Who gets paid first? Who sues when bills are disputed? Who gets scared away when the headlines turn ugly? And who is left holding the keys when the room revenue does not match the fantasy? That stack can be heavier than concrete, and in Washington, it was. Here is the paradox at the center of Washington's $375 million hotel nightmare. The property was valuable because it was historic, public, central, symbolic, and famous. But those same traits made it dangerous. The history made renovation complicated. The public ownership made the lease politically sensitive. The central location made it visible. The symbolism made every guest seem like a statement. The fame brought attention. The attention brought lawsuits, investigations, and reputational risk. The luxury made the expectations enormous. The sale price made the next chapter financially unforgiving. In other words, the very things that made the hotel a trophy also made it a trap. That is why this story belongs in the hotel disaster file even without a physical collapse. Because a hotel does not have to fall down to become a warning. Sometimes the walls stand perfectly straight while the deal underneath caves in. Sometimes the chandelier still shines while the balance sheet is screaming. Sometimes the worst nightmare is not rubble in the street. It is a building so prestigious that everyone wants to own it, and so complicated that owning it becomes the problem. Washington got its luxury hotel. The lobby looked expensive. The location was unbeatable. The name was famous. The sale price was massive. And then the bill arrived anyway.